In 1940, the British government made it a criminal offence to throw away a slice of bread. Under the waste of food order, your grandmother could be fined, prosecuted, and publicly shamed for putting potato peelings in the bin. They said waste was sabotage. They said thrift was patriotism. They said every ounce of food mattered. Your grandmother listened. She made broth from bones, jam from carrots, and fed a family of 6 on a weekly ration book. A 2021 report from WRAP found that British households now waste 6.6 million tons of food every year. The skills your grandmother used to keep her family alive have been quietly buried under 70 years of supermarket convenience. Number 8 on this list involves an animal the government once begged your grandparents to keep in their back garden. Today, your council will send an enforcement officer if a neighbour complains. Number 4 describes a communal feeding system that kept entire streets alive through the Blitz. It is now functionally illegal in residential Britain. Number 12 is a remedy the Ministry of Health itself organised schoolchildren to produce by the tonne. No chemist in the country sells it today. These 20 tricks were not forgotten because they stopped working. They were forgotten because somebody made money when you stopped doing them. Hit subscribe. What you are about to hear is not survivalist fantasy, it is British history. Let us count down. Number 20, carrot jam. Your grandmother's kitchen in 1941 smelt of something strange, sweet, warm, and golden, but not quite like any jam you would recognize. Carrots were simmering in a heavy pan with a squeeze of lemon and whatever spice she had left in the cupboard. The Ministry of Food promoted carrot jam as a direct replacement for marmalade and strawberry preserves when sugar imports from the Caribbean collapsed during the Battle of the Atlantic. Merchant ships were being sunk faster than they could be built, and sugar was one of the first casualties. The recipe was simple: boil 2 pounds of carrots until soft, mash them, add the juice of 1 lemon and half a teaspoon of mixed spice, simmer for 20 minutes until thick. The natural sugars in the carrot caramelized under heat, producing a spreadable preserve with no added sugar at all. She spread it on national loaf, the dense wholemeal bread the government mandated to stretch flour supplies. A 2017 analysis in the Journal of Food Science confirmed that cooked carrots release significantly more bioavailable beta-carotene than raw ones. Your grandmother was not making do, she was making something better. The supermarket jam aisle now offers 40 varieties. Every one of them is loaded with refined sugar. Hers had none. Number 19, the Anderson shelter as a cold larder. Today, a fridge freezer costs between £300 and £800 and uses roughly 400 kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. Your grandfather had a hole in his back garden. The Anderson shelter, 6 curved sheets of corrugated steel bolted together and buried under 18 inches of soil, maintained a steady temperature between 2 and 6 degrees Celsius year-round. No electricity, no moving parts, no monthly bill. After the bombing stopped, thousands of families across Britain continued to use their Anderson shelters not as air raid protection, but as cold storage. Root vegetables, apples, cured meats, and preserves lasted months in the dark, cool earth. When the council eventually ordered shelters removed in the late 1940s and early 1950s to make way for new housing estates, families lost not just a wartime relic, but a functioning larder that had cost them nothing to run. He never called it a fridge. He did not need to. Number 18, saving every drop of cooking water. Your grandmother never poured cooking water down the drain, not once. The water from boiled potatoes went into tomorrow's bread dough, giving it a softer crumb and a longer shelf life. The water from boiled greens, cabbage, kale, turnip tops, was cooled and drunk as a thin broth or used as the liquid base for soup the following day. The water from boiled beetroot was saved for dyeing fabric. Nothing left the kitchen that still had use in it. She did not know the word for it, but she was practicing what nutritionists now call nutrient recovery. When vegetables are boiled, up to 50% of their water-soluble vitamins, including vitamin C and several B vitamins, leach directly into the cooking water. A 2014 study in the International Journal of Gastronomy and Food Science measured the vitamin retention in vegetable cooking water and found meaningful concentrations of potassium, folate, and vitamin B6. Today, that water goes straight down the plug hole. Every evening, in millions of British kitchens, she kept every drop. Waste was not in her vocabulary. The science simply proved what her instincts already knew. Number 17, banking a coal fire through the night. The last thing your grandfather did before bed was tend the fire. Coal was rationed to roughly 100 weight per household per month during the worst of the war. Relighting a fire every morning cost fuel he could not spare, so he banked it. He pushed the hot coals together, laid a thick layer of coal dust and ash over the top, and closed the damper to reduce airflow to almost nothing. The fire smoldered at a low burn for 8 to 10 hours. In the morning, he raked the ash away, opened the damper, and the coals caught again within minutes. No kindling, no matches, no waste. One fire, banked properly, could last an entire winter without being relit. He understood combustion the way an engineer understands it, not from a textbook, but from doing it every night for 6 years. That is not a trick. That is mastery. Number 16. The allotment. This is not about a single trick. This is about the most successful food program in British history, and how it was quietly dismantled in the decades that followed. In 1942, there were approximately 1.4 million allotment plots in England and Wales. The Dig for Victory campaign, launched by the Ministry of Agriculture in 1939, turned parks, tennis courts, railway embankments, and bomb sites into productive food gardens. At its peak, allotments and domestic gardens were producing roughly 10% of all food consumed in Britain. Families grew potatoes, cabbages, onions, carrots, runner beans, and soft fruit. The Women's Institute organized regional networks for preserving surplus harvests into jams, pickles, and chutneys. Nothing was wasted, nothing was bought that could be grown. By 1970, the number of allotments had fallen below 500,000. Councils sold allotment land for housing development. The 1969 Thorpe Report recommended sweeping sell-offs, and local authorities across the country quietly complied. Between 1970 and 1995, an estimated 200,000 plots were lost to developers. Today, there are roughly 330,000 allotments in the UK, and the National Allotment Society reports waiting lists of up to 40 years in some boroughs. The system that fed this country during its darkest hour was sold to property developers within a single generation. A plot that produced free food for a family was paved over and turned into a driveway for a car that drives to the supermarket. The irony would be comic if it were not so devastating. Number 15. Woolton pie. The government told your grandmother to eat it. The Ministry of Food printed the recipe in every newspaper in the country and named it after Lord Woolton, the Minister of Food himself. It was a pastry-topped pie filled with diced potatoes, cauliflower, swede, carrots, and oatmeal, seasoned with vegetable extract. No meat, no dairy in the filling. The entire dish could be made from what grew in the back garden. It cost virtually nothing. Some families ate it 3 times a week during the worst months of rationing. It became a symbol of wartime thrift, mocked by comedians, grumbled about in factory canteens, and quietly relied upon by millions of households who had no other option. It kept children fed when the Atlantic convoys could not get through. The government now spends millions promoting plant-based diets as though the idea were revolutionary. Your grandmother was eating plant-based meals by necessity 60 years before it became a lifestyle brand sold in cardboard packaging at 3 times the price. She did not need a marketing campaign. She needed to feed her children. She managed. Number 14. Collecting rainwater. 1,000 square feet of roof surface collects approximately 600 gallons of water per inch of rainfall. Britain receives on average between 30 and 50 inches per year, depending on region. Your grandfather knew this without measuring it. He placed barrels beneath every downpipe and used the water for the garden, for washing, for livestock, and with basic filtration through sand and charcoal for drinking. Today, while rainwater collection remains legal in England for garden use, using it for drinking water in any structure connected to main supply brings you into conflict with the Water Supply Regulations 1999, which require all potable water to meet standards enforced by the Drinking Water Inspectorate. A 2020 study from the University of Plymouth found that properly filtered rainwater in rural England met or exceeded WHO drinking water guidelines in the majority of samples tested. The water falls for free. A privatized company charges you for it and pumps sewage into your river with the profit. Your grandfather simply caught it before they could. Nobody banned rain. Number 13. Tallow candles and soap from cooking fat. Your grandmother kept a tin beside the cooker. Every scrap of fat, from the Sunday roast, from frying, from rendering the cheapest cuts the butcher had left, went into that tin. When it was full, she melted the fat slowly, strained it through muslin to remove the solids, and poured the clean tallow into molds for candles or mixed it with lye made from wood ash for soap. During the war, the government ran a national fat salvage campaign. Housewives were asked to hand in surplus cooking fat to collection depots where it was processed into glycerin for explosives. Posters in every high street read, "Save your bacon fat, it makes shells and bombs." But your grandmother kept enough back for her own household. She always did. One batch of tallow soap lasted months. It cleaned skin, clothes, and kitchen surfaces without a single synthetic chemical. Today, a single bar of artisanal tallow soap retails for £6 to £9 in a health food shop. She made hers from scraps the butcher gave away for nothing, not a single penny. Number 12. Rosehip syrup. This is the trick the government itself promoted, then quietly surrendered to the pharmaceutical industry. In 1941, the Ministry of Health launched a nationwide campaign to collect wild rose hips from hedgerows across Britain. The reason was urgent. The German U-boat blockade had severed citrus imports, and the British population faced widespread vitamin C deficiency. Rose hips contain roughly 20 times more vitamin C per gram than oranges. The ministry organized schoolchildren, women's institute groups, and village volunteers to harvest rose hips by the ton. Collection centers were established in every county. The hips were processed into a standardized syrup and distributed free to mothers and children through welfare clinics. In 1943 alone, over 2,500 tons of rose hips were collected across England and Wales. The program was one of the most successful public health interventions of the 20th century. Scurvy was effectively prevented. Nutritional analyses conducted after the war found that children in wartime Britain had better vitamin C intake than children in the peacetime years that followed. After the war, the program was wound down. Citrus imports resumed. The pharmaceutical industry moved in with synthetic vitamin C supplements. Today, a bottle of vitamin C tablets costs between £4 and £8. The rose hips still grow in every hedgerow in the country. They are free, nobody picks them. The infrastructure of knowledge, how to identify the hips, when to harvest, how to process and preserve the syrup, was allowed to decay within a single generation. Your grandmother knew which hedgerow to walk and when. Her grandchildren drive past them at 40 miles an hour without looking. Number 11. Hay box cooking. Your grandmother started a stew on the stove, brought it to a rolling boil for 10 minutes, then lifted the entire pot off the heat and placed it inside a wooden box packed tight with hay, old blankets, or crumpled newspaper. She closed the lid and walked away. The insulation held the temperature above 75 degrees Celsius for hours. The stew continued to cook slowly, tenderizing cheap cuts of meat that would have been tough otherwise, softening root vegetables, deepening the flavor of whatever herbs she had thrown in. All of it without using a single additional piece of coal, a single cubic foot of gas. The Ministry of Fuel encouraged retained heat cooking during the war as a way to stretch coal rations further. A 2018 paper in Energy Research and Social Science found that retained heat cooking methods reduced domestic energy consumption for meal preparation by up to 80%. She cooked for 4 hours on 10 minutes of fuel. No timer, no thermostat. She knew when it was done because she had done it 100 times before. She was not being primitive. She was being brilliant. Number 10. Darning socks and patching clothes for warmth. Clothing was rationed. 66 coupons per year under the 1941 clothes rationing order, and a single pair of socks cost 3 of them. Your grandmother sat by the fire with a darning mushroom, a needle, and a length of wool. She did not darn socks to be frugal, she darned them to survive. A wool sock, darned at the heel and toe, retained its full thermal properties for years. She patched coats with scraps from older garments. She turned shirt collars when they frayed. She let down hems for growing children and took them up again for the next one down. She kept her family clothed and warm with a needle and thread and nothing else. She did this for 6 years. Her children never went cold. Nobody complained. Nobody needed to. Number 9. Newspaper insulation. Sheets of newspaper, layered between walls and plaster, or stuffed under floorboards and behind skirting boards, create dead air pockets that function as basic thermal insulation. During the war, when building materials were requisitioned for military use, families insulated their homes with whatever they could find. Newspaper was abundant and free. Your grandfather took stacks of the Daily Express and the Mirror and packed them into every gap, every crack, every hollow space behind the wainscoting. He lined the inside of the roof space with sheets of it. He wedged it into the frames of rattling sash windows. A study published by the Building Research Establishment found that cellulose-based insulation, which is chemically processed newsprint, reduces heat loss through walls by up to 35%. Your grandfather did not have the study. He had a cold house, a drafty window frame, and a stack of yesterday's papers. He stuffed them into every gap he could reach. It worked. It always worked. The result was the same whether you measured it with a thermometer or with your hand held up to the window frame. The draft stopped. Number 8. Backyard chickens. Today, if you keep more than 50 poultry, you are required to register your flock with the Animal and Plant Health Agency under the Registration of Poultry Premises Order 2006. Avian influenza control zones can restrict the movement and sale of eggs overnight. Council planning guidance in many urban boroughs actively discourages or prohibits keeping poultry in residential gardens through noise, odor, and nuisance regulation. During the war, the government took the opposite position entirely. The Domestic Poultry Keepers Council was established in 1940 to encourage families to keep hens at home. Families who registered their birds received an extra allowance of balance a meal through the rationing system. A single hen produces between 250 and 300 eggs per year. 3 hens in a small back garden could supply almost all of a family's protein needs. By the mid-1950s, the egg industry had consolidated. Battery farming scaled up to industrial proportions. The price of shop-bought eggs dropped, and backyard keeping was quietly discouraged as the commercial industry expanded to produce over 11 billion eggs per year in the UK by 2020. The small-scale keeper was regulated, inspected, and nudged out. The battery farm was subsidized and expanded. Your grandmother's 3 hens cost her nothing but kitchen scraps and a handful of grain. The eggs were fresh, rich, deep orange in the yolk, and free. The eggs on the supermarket shelf today are produced in conditions she would not have recognized as farming. She knew the difference. So do you. Number 7. Blackout curtains repurposed as draft excluders. They were mandatory. Every window in Britain had to be covered with heavy, opaque material to prevent light being visible to German bombers overhead. The Lighting Order of 1939 meant your grandmother hung thick curtains, sometimes double layers of heavy cotton, wool blend, or even tarred fabric, across every window and external door in the house. What the government intended as an air raid precaution became by accident the most effective draft-proofing system in the country. The heavy material trapped a layer of still air between the cold glass and the room. Heat loss through windows dropped dramatically. A drafty Victorian terrace became noticeably warmer overnight. Your grandmother noticed the difference. After the war ended, she kept hers up. The thin, decorative curtains her neighbors replaced them with let the heat pour straight out. She saw no reason to follow. Number 6. Bone broth from every carcass. Your grandmother never bought a stock cube in her life. She made broth from bones, chicken carcasses, beef marrow bones, lamb shanks picked clean at the table, simmered in water with an onion, a carrot, and a bay leaf for 12 to 24 hours on the back of the range. The collagen in the bones broke down into gelatin, and the minerals, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, leached steadily into the liquid. The result was a rich, golden broth that formed the base of every soup, every stew, every pie, and every gravy she made for the rest of the week. During rationing, when meat was limited to roughly 1 shilling and 2pence worth per person per week, extracting every last gram of nutrition from the bones was not a choice. It was essential. Nothing was wasted, not a scrap. A 2017 study published in the journal Food and Nutrition Research confirmed that long-simmered bone broth contains measurable concentrations of collagen-derived amino acids, particularly glycine and proline. The bones the butcher once gave away for free, sometimes threw away, are now marketed as a premium superfood ingredient at £7 a jar. She would have laughed. Number 5. Lime wash for damp and disease. In the damp terraces of Welsh mining villages and the stone cottages of the Yorkshire Dales, your great-grandmother whitewashed the interior walls every spring. It was not decoration. Lime wash, a simple solution of slaked lime mixed with water, is naturally alkaline with a pH above 12. At that level, mold cannot grow, mildew cannot take hold, bacteria die on contact with the surface. In the damp British climate, where condensation ran down interior walls from October to April and black mold crept into corners that never saw sunlight, lime wash was the difference between a healthy household and a sick one. The Women's Institute promoted lime washing as a basic household hygiene practice well into the 1950s. 1 bag of builder's lime cost pennies and covered every wall in a small cottage. She mixed it in a bucket, painted it on with a wide brush, and it dried to a bright, clean white. She did this every year, without fail. Her children breathed clean air in a damp house. Nobody fell ill from the walls. Nobody needed a specialist survey. Modern anti-mold spray costs £8 to £12 a bottle, contains synthetic fungicides, and achieves less. She knew what worked. Number 4. Pig clubs. This is the one that tells you everything about what was lost. In 1940, the Ministry of Food authorized the formation of pig clubs, small neighborhood-based cooperatives where groups of families pooled their kitchen scraps, vegetable waste, and surplus garden produce to feed a communally owned pig. By 1943, there were approximately 6,900 pig clubs operating across Britain, collectively keeping nearly 105,000 pigs. The clubs were governed by simple democratic rules. Every member contributed scraps. When the pig was slaughtered, the meat was divided among the members according to contribution. The system was extraordinarily efficient. Kitchen waste that would otherwise have rotted was converted directly into pork, bacon, lard, and sausages. A single pig, raised on household scraps and garden surplus, produced between 100 and 200 pounds of usable meat. The families involved spent nothing on commercial feed beyond what they would have discarded anyway. After the war, pig clubs were progressively shut down. The 1955 Food and Drugs Act tightened slaughtering regulations. Environmental health rules, waste disposal law, and planning permission requirements made communal pig keeping impractical in residential areas. By the 1970s, pig clubs had effectively ceased to exist in Britain. The commercial pork industry grew to fill the gap. Today, British supermarkets import approximately 60% of the pork sold in the UK, much of it from intensive operations in Denmark, the Netherlands, and Germany. Your grandparents fed their entire street from one pig raised on scraps. You buy imported bacon, wrapped in plastic, produced in a facility 1,000 miles from your kitchen. The system that replaced the pig club is not more efficient. It is more profitable for somebody else. Number 3, elderberry and nettle tonics. Today, a bottle of elderberry extract retails for £12 to £15 in a health food shop. Your grandmother picked the berries from the hedgerow in September, simmered them with cloves and a little honey, strained the liquid through muslin, and bottled the syrup for winter. When the first coughs came in November, she gave each child a tablespoon before bed. Elderberries contain high concentrations of anthocyanins, flavonoid compounds that a 2019 meta-analysis in complementary therapies in medicine found to be associated with reduced duration and severity of upper respiratory infections. Nettle tea, made from the young leaves picked in April and May before the plant flowers, dried slowly on a wooden rack in the kitchen, was her iron tonic. She brewed it like ordinary tea and drank a cup every morning in spring. Nettles contain more iron per gram than spinach and were recommended by rural midwives for generations. She foraged both for free from the same hedgerow walk year after year. The elderflower in June for cordial, the berries in September for syrup, the nettles in April for tea. The hedgerow was her chemist. The plants are still there. The knowledge cost nothing. She never asked permission. Use them. Number 2, hot water bottles and heated bricks. A modern central heating system costs between £3,000 and £5,000 to install and between £1,000 and £2,000 per year to run. It heats every room in the house, including rooms nobody is sitting in. Your grandmother heated a brick in the oven, wrapped it in a flannel, and placed it at the foot of the bed. It radiated gentle warmth for 6 to 8 hours. She filled a stoneware hot water bottle and held it on her lap while she sewed by the fire. She heated the person, not the building. The energy cost was negligible. The brick warmed in an oven already lit for cooking. The water boiled on a stove already burning for tea. No thermostat, no boiler, no standing charge, no engineer's call-out fee. She was warm. Her family was warm. The house was cold, and nobody minded, because the people inside it were not. Number 1, the philosophy your grandparents lived by. This is not a trick, it is not a technique. It is the thing that made every other trick on this list possible. Your grandparents were not tough because they chose to be. They were tough because the world demanded it, and they answered. 6 years of war and 9 years of rationing did not break them, it built them. Every shortage they endured gave them a skill. Every scarcity they faced sharpened an instinct. They could feed a family from a garden no larger than a modern parking space. They could heat a home on banked coals and a wrapped brick. They could cure a winter cold with rosehip syrup brewed in their own kitchen. They could insulate a drafty house with newspaper, keep meat fresh in a buried shelter, and turn kitchen scraps into 100 pounds of pork. They could do all of this because hardship taught them, and they were willing to learn. That is resilience. Not grit, not nostalgia. Capability earned through necessity. And that is exactly what comfort has quietly taken from us. Not our intelligence, our reason to use it. The supermarket replaced the allotment, and the knowledge of soil went with it. The pharmaceutical company replaced the hedgerow, and the knowledge of plants disappeared. The energy company replaced the banked fire, and the knowledge of heat was forgotten. Convenience did not improve upon what your grandparents knew. It simply made it unnecessary. And what is unnecessary for long enough is eventually lost. Your grandparents were not extraordinary people. They were ordinary people who were tested by extraordinary circumstances, and the testing made them capable of anything. We have never been tested. We have been supplied, billed, and managed. We have mistaken that comfort for progress, and we have confused dependence with safety. Now, imagine your grandmother standing in a modern British kitchen. The fridge hums with food flown from 3 continents. The heating runs in every room, including the ones nobody is sitting in. The tap pours clean water, billed at £400 a year. And in the bin sits a whole chicken carcass, thrown away because nobody in the house knew what to do with it. Imagine her face. Imagine what she would say. She would not say we failed. She would say we got comfortable. And she would tell us, calmly, firmly, the way she always did, that comfort is not the same thing as strength. It never was. Pick one, just one trick from this list, and try it this week. Put a water butt under your downpipe before the next rain. Plant 3 elderberry bushes along the back fence before October. Ask your mother whether she still has your grandmother's recipe book in the attic. Make bone broth from the chicken carcass you were about to throw away. Darn a pair of socks. Make a jar of carrot jam. Tell me in the comments which one you're trying first. Tell me if your grandparents did any of these. Tell me which wartime tricks your grandmother knew that were not on this list. I promise you, somebody in your family carried every piece of knowledge you have just heard. Somebody in your family lived it. That knowledge did not die. It was never truly forgotten. It just went quiet for a while, drowned out by convenience and advertising and regulation, but it is still here, in the hedgerows, in the rain, in the soil beneath your garden, in the old recipe books, gathering dust in the attic. It is time to start listening again.